The year 1621 marked more than just the famous harvest celebration that would become Thanksgiving. While Plymouth Colony struggled through its brutal first winter, the arrival of European technology was about to revolutionize American agriculture and industry forever. In that pivotal year, the first windmill on American soil was constructed, bringing Dutch engineering genius to the shores of New England and transforming the very landscape of colonial life. This wasn't just about grinding grain. It was about bringing civilization, efficiency, and technological advancement to a continent that had relied on manual labor and traditional Native American methods for millennia. The Dutch windmill represented something far more significant than a simple mechanical device. It was the first significant technological transfer from Europe to the New World, one that would fundamentally alter the course of American development. The story of America's first windmill begins not in Plymouth, but in the Dutch Republic, where centuries of engineering innovation had created machines capable of standing against the harsh Atlantic winds that regularly lashed the coastline. These weren't crude wooden structures, but sophisticated pieces of engineering that could operate in conditions that would destroy lesser constructions. When Dutch traders and settlers brought this technology to New England, they weren't just installing machinery, they were laying the foundation for America's industrial future. But this technological revolution brought its own challenges, conflicts, and cultural exchanges that would shape the relationship between Europeans and Native Americans for generations to come. The Dutch Republic of the early 17th century was Europe's engineering powerhouse. For centuries, they had been battling the sea itself, creating elaborate systems of dikes, canals, and pumps that kept vast swaths of land above water. This constant struggle with the elements had produced some of the most advanced wind-powered technology in the world. Dutch windmills weren't simple wooden structures spinning in the breeze. They were sophisticated machines designed by master artisans who had inherited generations of engineering knowledge. The most famous were the grist mills that ground grain. But Dutch engineers had also perfected windmills for cutting wood, pressing oil, pumping water, and even manufacturing paper. These machines represented the pinnacle of early modern engineering. Their massive wooden gear systems could convert the rotational energy of wind into precise mechanical power. The wooden cogs and gears were precisely carved to mesh perfectly, creating machines that could operate reliably for decades with minimal maintenance. Most importantly, Dutch windmills were explicitly designed to withstand the fierce Atlantic storms that regularly battered the European coastline. Their reinforced structures and carefully engineered foundations made them far more durable than similar devices built elsewhere in Europe. When Dutch traders and settlers arrived in the New World, they brought not just trade goods and precious metals, but also the technical knowledge that had made the Netherlands the most prosperous nation in Europe. Among their most valuable cargo was the engineering expertise needed to construct windmills that could operate in the entirely different environmental conditions of North America. The challenge was enormous. The winds of New England were different from those of the Dutch coast. The timber available was different. The geological conditions were unknown. But most challenging of all was the simple fact that no one had ever attempted to build a windmill in the Americas before. The first attempts were necessarily experimental. Dutch engineers had to adapt centuries of European windmill technology to work in completely unfamiliar conditions. The massive timbers needed to support the towering structures had to be sourced from American forests. The traditional European building techniques had to be modified for American materials and climate. Yet within months of the first Dutch settlements, the first windmill on American soil was taking shape. It wasn't just a building project. It was the beginning of America's industrial revolution. Plymouth Colony's first winter had been brutal. Of the 102 passengers who had arrived on the Mayflower, only 53 survived. Those who lived through the winter of 1620 to 1621 had watched friends and family members die from disease, malnutrition, and exposure. Their food supplies were nearly exhausted, their shelter barely adequate, and their tools were wearing out. The Pilgrims had brought some livestock and seeds, but their agricultural knowledge was limited to English farming methods that were poorly suited to the New England climate and soil. Their wheat crops were failing. Their manual grinding of grain was slow, inefficient, and required enormous amounts of physical labor. The colony's survival depended on establishing reliable food production and processing systems before the next winter arrived. But traditional English farming methods weren't working in this new environment. It was in this moment of crisis that Dutch traders arrived with a technological solution that would change everything. The Dutch had been trading with Native Americans for years, establishing relationships that gave them access to the best hunting grounds and agricultural regions. They had also been watching the struggles of the English colonies with growing interest and occasional concern. The Dutch offered not just trade goods, but technology. They proposed building the first windmill in the Americas, not as a charitable gesture, but as a business venture that would serve both Dutch commercial interests and help stabilize the struggling English colonies. The windmill they proposed would solve multiple problems simultaneously. It would provide efficient grain grinding for the Pilgrims, create a reliable source of income for Dutch investors, and demonstrate the superiority of Dutch engineering over English methods. Most importantly, it would establish Dutch technological dominance in the region at a time when European competition for American resources was intensifying. The site selected for America's first windmill was carefully chosen. It needed to be positioned to catch the prevailing winds from the Atlantic, close enough to Plymouth Colony to serve their needs, but far enough away to avoid conflicts over control. The location also needed to provide access to the water sources necessary for the mill's operation and the transport of grain. The construction process itself was a marvel of engineering and human determination. Dutch master artisans worked alongside local Native American laborers who provided knowledge of local timber and building techniques. European engineering principles were combined with American materials and environmental expertise. The windmill tower was constructed from massive oak and pine timbers, carefully selected and fitted together using traditional Dutch joinery techniques. The entire structure was reinforced to withstand the fierce New England winds that regularly exceeded anything the engineers had experienced in Europe. The mechanical systems, the massive gear trains, the drive shafts, the grinding stones, were all imported from the Netherlands or carefully reproduced by Dutch craftsmen using American materials. Every component had to be precisely engineered and meticulously assembled. The moment of truth came when the first American windmill began operation. As the massive wooden sails started turning in the New England wind, they represented not just technological achievement, but the beginning of a new era in American development. The initial operation revealed both the technology's potential and its limitations in its new environment. The wind patterns were indeed different from those of the Dutch coast. The New England winds were more variable, with sudden changes that could damage the delicate mechanical systems if not properly managed. The first few weeks of operation were spent fine-tuning the machine, adjusting the sail angles, and modifying the gear ratios to optimize performance under American conditions. Dutch engineers worked frantically to solve unexpected problems while simultaneously training local operators in the delicate art of windmill maintenance and operation. When the windmill finally began grinding grain reliably, its impact was immediate and dramatic. What had previously required hours of backbreaking manual labor could now be accomplished in minutes. The Pilgrims could process their grain more efficiently, allowing them to focus on other essential tasks, such as building shelter, cultivating crops, and preparing for the following winter. But the windmill's impact went far beyond simple labor savings. It demonstrated that European technology could be successfully adapted to American conditions. It proved that the New World was capable of supporting advanced industrial development. Most importantly, It established a technological foundation that enabled the American colonies to achieve levels of productivity that eventually surpassed those of their European rivals. The windmill also created new economic opportunities. Dutch investors saw their investment paying dividends as the mill processed grain not just for Plymouth, but also for other colonies. Native American communities began bringing their own grain to be processed, creating new economic relationships and dependencies. As word spread about the successful operation of America's first windmill, it became more than just an industrial facility. It became a gathering place, a symbol of European civilization in the wilderness, and a testament to what could be achieved through the combination of advanced technology and determined human effort. Pilgrims would come to watch the massive sails turning against the New England sky, marveling at this piece of Europe that had somehow been transported to the edge of the wilderness. Native Americans came to observe and sometimes participate in the grinding process, learning about European industrial techniques and forming relationships with Dutch artisans. The windmill became a focal point for technological education and cultural exchange. European methods were taught to local operators. Native American agricultural techniques were shared with Dutch engineers. The result was a unique hybrid of technologies that was more effective than either tradition alone. The arrival of the Dutch windmill created complex reactions among Native American communities. Some saw it as a helpful tool that could improve their own agricultural productivity. Others viewed it with suspicion, recognizing it as another sign of European expansion and technological dominance. The Wampanoag and other regional tribes had been observing European technological developments with growing interest and concern. They had already adopted European metal tools, firearms, and other technology. Still, the windmill represented something more fundamental, a permanent European presence that would alter the region's landscape and social structure. Some Native American leaders recognized the potential benefits of windmill technology for their own communities. Efficient grain processing could improve food security, reduce labor requirements, and free people for other essential tasks such as trade, diplomacy, and military preparation. Despite initial reservations, many Native American communities began to learn about windmill technology and its potential applications. Native American artisans worked alongside Dutch engineers, understanding the principles of wind-powered machinery and contributing their own knowledge of local materials and construction techniques. The process of technological adaptation was complex and sometimes controversial. Some Native American leaders worried that dependence on European technology would create dangerous dependencies that European powers could exploit. Others argued that the benefits outweighed the risks, and that technological advancement was necessary for survival in a rapidly changing world. Native American communities began experimenting with their own versions of wind-powered machinery. They adapted European designs to work with local materials and environmental conditions. Some tribes began constructing more miniature windmills for specific tasks, such as pumping water or powering tools. As the windmill proved successful, it became integrated into the broader regional economy. Native American farmers began bringing grain to be processed, creating new economic relationships with both Dutch traders and English colonists. The windmill became a neutral ground where different cultures could interact and exchange goods, knowledge, and ideas. This economic integration had profound implications for power relationships in the region. Native American communities that mastered windmill technology gained economic advantages over those that remained dependent on traditional methods. Dutch traders gained enormous influence by controlling access to this valuable technology. The windmill also facilitated trade among different Native American tribes, as communities that previously had limited contact began gathering at the mill site to process grain and conduct business. The success of the first American windmill sparked a wave of replication across New England. Within 2 years of the initial installation, at least a dozen more windmills were under construction, or already operating in various colonial settlements and Native American communities. Each new installation represented not just a copy of the original, but an improvement based on lessons learned from operational experience. Engineers modified the basic Dutch design to suit local conditions better. Some mills were built smaller for use by individual communities. Others were constructed larger to serve multiple settlements. The rapid spread of windmill technology transformed the agricultural economy of the entire region. Colonies that had previously struggled with grain processing could now produce flour more efficiently and in greater quantities. This increased productivity helped stabilize colonial economies and reduce their dependence on imports from Europe. As windmill technology spread, it created new forms of competition between European powers. The Dutch had established technological dominance, but the English, French, and Spanish were determined not to be left behind. Each European power began investing heavily in bringing advanced technology to its American colonies. This technological competition drove innovation. European engineers worked frantically to develop better windmills, more efficient grinding systems, and more durable construction methods. The result was a rapid advancement in wind-powered technology that would have taken decades to achieve through normal development processes. The competition also led to the development of specialized windmills for different purposes. Some were designed specifically for grinding corn rather than wheat. Others were built to power sawmills for cutting timber. Still others were constructed to pump water for irrigation or drainage. The proliferation of windmills began to change the very landscape of New England. The towering wooden structures became familiar landmarks, visible for miles across the landscape. The rhythmic creaking of windmill mechanisms became part of the natural soundscape of the region. The environmental impact was significant. Windmills require clear areas around them for safe operation, leading to additional deforestation. The increased agricultural productivity they enabled led to expanded cultivation and greater pressure on native ecosystems. But the environmental changes weren't entirely negative. The windmills also enabled more sophisticated water management systems that could drain wetlands and irrigate dry areas, effectively reshaping the regional hydrology. The visual impact was equally profound. The windmills became symbols of European civilization imposing itself on the American wilderness. They represented humanity's triumph over natural limitations and the beginning of America's transformation from wilderness to civilization. The introduction of windmill technology created entirely new economic opportunities in New England. The mills themselves became valuable economic assets, generating income for their owners and operators while serving the broader community's needs. Dutch merchants who had invested in windmill construction saw their profits grow as the mills proved successful. The technology had proven so valuable that some mills could process grain for a fee, creating a new service industry in the colonial economy. The increased efficiency of grain processing also had downstream economic effects. Colonial farmers could produce more grain with less labor, allowing them to expand their operations or diversify into other activities. This increased productivity helped stabilize colonial economies and made them more attractive to potential immigrants. The windmill also reinforced and altered social hierarchies within colonial society. Those who controlled access to the technology gained significant power and influence. Dutch merchants and engineers who possessed windmill expertise became indispensable to colonial development. European colonists who learned to operate windmills gained valuable skills that made them valuable members of their communities. Native Americans who mastered the technology found new opportunities for economic advancement and social influence. But the technology also created new forms of dependency and inequality. Communities without access to windmills found themselves at a disadvantage compared to those with the technology. This led to increased pressure on indigenous communities to adopt European methods and submit to European technological control. The introduction of windmill technology significantly altered labor patterns and gender roles in colonial society. Traditional grain processing had been primarily women's work, requiring long hours of manual labor with stone hand mills. The windmill automated this process, freeing women for other activities, but also reducing their economic importance in grain production. Some women found new opportunities as mill operators, assistants, or managers. Others were displaced by the technology and had to find new ways to contribute to their family's economic welfare. The windmill's impact on gender roles reflected broader changes that European colonization brought to traditional Native American and colonial social structures. The technology also changed the nature of work for men, creating new skilled trades around windmill construction, maintenance, and operation. These skilled positions provided new opportunities for economic advancement and social status. The first American windmill represented the beginning of America's transformation from a primarily agricultural society to an industrial power. The principles demonstrated by the windmill, mechanization, efficiency, technological innovation, would drive American development for centuries to come. The windmill showed that American resources and conditions could support advanced industrial technology. It proved that Europeans could successfully adapt their technologies to American environments. Most importantly, it demonstrated that American colonies could achieve levels of productivity that would eventually surpass their European rivals. The knowledge gained from windmill construction and operation laid the foundation for later industrial developments. The mechanical principles learned from windmills would be applied to water mills, steam engines, and eventually to the factory systems that would define America's industrial age. The windmill episode demonstrated the crucial role that technological transfer played in American development. European expertise, combined with American resources and innovation, created new possibilities that neither tradition could achieve alone. This pattern of technological transfer and adaptation would characterize American development for centuries. American engineers consistently took European innovations. They improved them, creating technologies that were often superior to their European originals. The windmill was the first example of this distinctly American approach to technological development. The cultural exchange that surrounded windmill development also established patterns that would shape American society. Europeans and Native Americans worked together to develop new technologies, creating hybrid approaches that were more effective than either tradition alone. This collaborative innovation would become a defining characteristic of American technological development. The long-term environmental impact of windmill technology was profound and lasting. The windmills themselves became permanent features of the New England landscape, fundamentally altering its appearance and ecology. The increased agricultural productivity they enabled led to permanent changes in land use and settlement patterns. The social impact was equally significant. Windmill technology helped establish European technological dominance in the region, contributing to the eventual displacement of indigenous technologies and knowledge systems. At the same time, it created new opportunities for economic advancement and social mobility that would reshape colonial society. The windmill also symbolized the beginning of humanity's massive-scale transformation of the American environment. The tall wooden structures were the first central industrial installations in the New World, representing the beginning of America's transition from wilderness to civilization. The year 1621 was pivotal in American history for reasons that extend far beyond the famous First Thanksgiving. It was a year when European technological innovation began permanently transforming the American environment and social structure. The windmill's construction coincided with crucial developments in colonial politics, economics, and diplomacy. The successful operation of the windmill demonstrated that European technology could thrive in American conditions, encouraging further investment in colonial development. The technological success also influenced European perceptions of American potential. Reports of successful windmill operation convinced many in Europe that the New World was capable of supporting advanced civilization, encouraging further colonization and investment. The Windmill episode occurred amid intense international competition for American resources and territory. The Dutch success with windmill technology gave them significant advantages over their European rivals, who were struggling to establish comparable technological capabilities in their own American colonies. This technological competition drove rapid innovation and development. Each European power invested heavily in bringing advanced technology to its colonies, creating a technological arms race that accelerated American development far beyond what would have occurred through normal evolutionary processes. The windmill thus represented not just technological achievement, but strategic victory in the broader contest for American dominance. Control over advanced technology meant control over economic development, social change, and political influence. The windmill's construction and operation created new forms of cultural exchange and conflict between Europeans and Native Americans. The technology required collaboration between different cultural groups, but it also created new forms of dependence and inequality. Some Native American communities successfully adapted windmill technology to their own needs, using it to strengthen their communities and maintain their independence. Others found themselves increasingly dependent on European technology and European control. The windmill thus became a symbol of the complex relationship between technological advancement and cultural change. It demonstrated both the potential benefits of technological innovation and the dangers of technological dependence. The first American windmill of 1621 was far more than a simple grinding machine. It was the first step in America's transformation from a wilderness to an industrial civilization. The principles of mechanization, efficiency, and technological innovation that it represented would drive American development for centuries to come. The windmill showed that American conditions could support advanced European technology, encouraging further colonial investment and development. It proved that Europeans and Native Americans could collaborate to create new technologies that were superior to either tradition alone. Most importantly, it established the pattern of technological adaptation and improvement that would become characteristic of American development. Americans consistently adopted European innovations and improved them, creating technologies that were often superior to their European originals. The windmill episode established several key principles that would shape American development. Technological adaptation. American conditions required European technologies to be modified and improved. This process of adaptation and improvement would become a defining characteristic of American innovation. Collaborative development. The windmill was created through collaboration between Europeans and Native Americans, combining different knowledge systems and resources. This collaborative approach would become a hallmark of American technological development. Practical innovation. The windmill was developed to solve practical problems faced by colonial communities. This focus on practical solutions would drive American technological development throughout its history. Economic transformation. The windmill created new economic opportunities and changed existing financial relationships. This economic impact would become increasingly important as America developed. Today, the site where America's first windmill was constructed is marked by a historical marker that tells the story of this technological revolution. But the windmill's real legacy lives on in every factory, mill, and industrial installation across America. The windmill of 1621 was the beginning of America's transformation from a continent of hunter-gatherers and subsistence farmers to the world's leading industrial power. It demonstrated that human ingenuity and technological innovation could overcome any environmental challenge or natural limitation. The story of America's first windmill is the story of America itself, a tale of technological innovation, cultural exchange, economic transformation, and the endless human capacity to adapt and improve upon the achievements of the past. As we look at today's massive wind turbines generating electricity across the American landscape, We can trace a direct technological lineage back to that first simple wooden windmill of 1621. The principle remains the same, capturing the wind's energy and converting it to human purposes. But the scale and sophistication have increased exponentially. The windmill's legacy reminds us that every outstanding technological achievement begins with a single step, a single machine, a single act of human ingenuity applied to solving real problems. America's first windmill was the first step on the path to becoming the world's technological leader. The wind that turned those massive wooden sails in 1621 continues to turn the turbines that power modern America. The innovative spirit that drove Dutch engineers to adapt their technology to American conditions lives on in every American inventor, engineer, and entrepreneur. The first American windmill was not just a machine. It was the beginning of America's Industrial Revolution, the foundation of American technological superiority, and the symbol of humanity's triumph over natural limitations. Its story is the story of America itself, told through wooden sails turning in the New England wind.